And we are live. Hello, word nerds. Happy Sunday. Welcome to our live chat. Today, we are going to be talking all about writing schools and academies and boarding school books, because I feel like that's all something that we really love to read, but it's kind of hard to get the real school feeling, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know how many of us want to relive high school. But there certainly is going to play a large part in a lot of YA or even new adult books in high school, college, what have you. So I think today we're going to be talking about some of our favorite books that feature schools, or be that contemporary or fantasy. We're going to be talking about maybe publisher wants and needs for schools, where the trends are. And we would love to hear any comments or questions you have in the comments. So make sure to leave stuff about dark academia. What's your favorite dark academia book? And I think I will kind of open the floor to the word nerds, talking about what is a series that features any kind of school that you really, really enjoyed.
I'm going to be the first one to talk about Fangirl, because that was one of the only contemporary settings that I enjoyed this school in, because she was a writer. And she was taking writing classes. So I found that very, very interesting. So it showed some of that, not enough to be boring. But it showed some of that, and it showed some of the competition / camaraderie between her and her classmates who were also in the writing class. And so I really enjoy stuff like that. So yeah, that was cool.
Mm-hmm. And that is a university college setting.
University, yes. I think. Yeah.
The flip side for me from realistic school, Vampire Academy. It's this is an academy for vampires, and also have vampires. But I loved that series. The school played, I don't know, because I think by book 3 they'd graduated or something like that. So still Vampire Academy, but we're at court now. I don't exactly remember, but I loved that series, and the school structure was a big part of it.
I've never actually read that because I'm not a big vampire person, but I didn't really ever think about the fact that I guess a private school, right? Because it's academy. Yeah, maybe I'll have to give that a try. I'm a big school fan. So. Yeah,
it's a very different vibe of vampires. They could almost be a different fantasy species that the author had made up. They were calling them vampires. They drink blood, but
it's one of those series that I was. It's one of those series that I was kind of I don't want to read that. It looks dumb, and now I'm on YouTube and book TikTok and everything was I love Vampire Academy. I'm all right, vampires are coming back.
Good.
I should watch this.
I just it still had a hold list at my library. The first one, because I'm binge reading all vampire stuff right now in preparation for a project, and so I just got that one in. I had to wait for 3 weeks to get the hold in because it's still that popular.
Wow.
So it's getting it already had an adaptation that was movie that's meh, but the CW is doing a show, and Julie Plec, who is the Vampire Diaries person, is going to be show running.
Vampire Diaries this week.
So.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be amazing.
What's the other one then? I always get it mixed up with Vampire Diaries.
I think Vampire Academy and Vampire Diaries. I think they came out around the same time. So
Vampire Diaries and Vampire. Okay, I get those two so confused for some reason.
Yeah. So a contemporary school that I really like that I can think of right away is from the book Cool for the Summer by Dahlia Adler, which is it's a identity, coming into your identity. This bi girl who during summer break had a fling with a girl, and then comes back in the fall to high school, and her male crush is there, and there's this kind of whole self-identity and friendship thing, and not needing to conform to meet someone else's expectations. But the high school setting itself was really prominent, and I think a good way. Maybe we'll get into this a little bit later of the right and wrong ways how write a school. Because there are teachers and homework, and she's stressing about math class, and I'm that's a normal thing for a teenager to do. But there's also a lot of football, which I think is an American thing. So I'm Canadian, so I'm what's up? she starts dating, the captain of the football team. So it's like all football related. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
I understood football from like American high school media. Like it wasn't a thing at our school, but I knew it was part of high school because Americans make TV shows and it's important to them. I don't know.
It's very, at least at the high school I was at, it was a very big deal.
As soon as that Kate would come up in a TV show or a book, I'd be like, I'm out. I do not care about football.
Well, the thing is, at least with my experience in an American high school, even if you weren't into football, things like circled the football games every Friday. If you were in the band, you were there. Groups of friends would just go and hang out, and like the concession stand had great chicken tenders, so we got to go on Friday and get the chicken tenders, and like it was like a social event in addition to just a game.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because another thing you'll see in contemporary books is like a lot of focus on a different extracurricular. Like I'm thinking of Kate in Waiting, where it's all about being in drama club or the school play, and like I did more of that than sports. So like, definitely, and like the book is set in a school setting, like they have classes and stuff, but the extracurriculars of their school life is more what's driving the plot and what their lives are structured around.
Which makes sense because that's when you actually get to like hang out and talk about things that you want to talk about or enjoy talking about.
Yeah, I'm thinking of actually the Raven Boys, kind of like similar thing where like the plot, it's not a school book, but it's definitely like there's like an academic theme to it because of Aglenby Academy, and like that's a major part. And a lot of it's like, well, I have homework, like I can't come out to go chase this magical king, and he's like, what do you mean you can't? Like that kind of thing. So like, and like I think Blue, gets grounded, and so she can't go. She can only go to school and then like go home. So like that's kind of like a part of their lives too. And I like that because it's like that stress of like going to a regular high school, but then also being like, I have all this other stuff to do. Like I need to go save the world. And then your teachers are like, you have something due tomorrow. You can't go do that.
It's also very like a specific culture. The one that the boys go to, like that is a rich person's school, basically. Like they have a Latin class and uniforms, and all the boys are talking about the summering and wherever, like they're very, and Blue feels that culture and is like uncomfortable with it. So yeah, that's a very, they go to two different types of schools. So that was an interesting contrast as well.
The book Felix Ever After kind of, it was Kelly, what you were saying about the Kate in Waiting and kind of like the more drama aspect. What I liked about Felix Ever After is that it was set during like summer, but he was still attending like a summer school course. And it was focused on art, and I'm not someone who is art inclined other than creative writing. So I thought it was kind of cool to like see into a different experience other than obviously sports in a school setting. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. I was thinking about Ninth House. That one's got a big school framework, but you have the supernatural. Because we were talking in the pre-chat about what books have schools in them, and my first thought when we decided we were going to talk about this was, publishing doesn't let you do school-based fantasy novels anymore because the one big one did it. And I was trying to think of, there must have been a lot, and I couldn't think of a ton that were straight
like
up
a Rachel
fantasy
Hawkins
at school.
one. Because it wasn't necessarily that like Harry Potter did it. It was then we did a bunch after Harry Potter to try to like capitalize on that, and then publishing was like, now we're done. So
I can't even think of any of the big ones.
Oh, Crazy you did say Twilight had a lot of school, or like London.
Yeah,
Hex Hall was the Rachel Hawkins one.
Yes. Oh my god, I forgot how much I love that series. Oh wow, throwback.
And the like PC Night ones were kind of school based. They were also vampire.
PC
Cast, yes. Yeah. House of Night.
There we go.
Yeah.
I guess Cassie Clare's The Institute was kind of a school setting as well in the City of Bones series.
What do we count as a school?
They had training.
Yeah, they didn't really have classes.
Didn't you have to like learn history of like the shadow hunters and stuff in there?
But it wasn't like a class.
If Clary had to do that.
I feel like it was a class setting in as much as like Twilight taking place in a biology class was a classroom setting.
And the teacher that was completely unrealistic because he was like, you don't like this boy, he's sexually harassing you? Here, sit next to him anyway. Complaining. Vanessa says, I think Maggie Stiefvater said she was homeschooled when she was writing Raven Boys, so she wrote very few actual school scenes. That's so funny because I was going to say, I was homeschooled all the way up to grade 10. And one of the big deciding factors in me actually going to a private school was that I was trying to write a book about people who were going to a private school or a school in general.
And that is such an Erin thing to say.
Well, I didn't know what like the school was like. And I was like, I don't know. And then my sister had already gone to this private school, and I was like, well, sign me up, I guess. So
it's research.
Grade 11 and 12, and I joined,
method acting,
and then for real, and then I joined the student council too, even though I had zero interest in it because my characters were on student council. So like, guess I'll do this too.
Well, you better publish that one day because
yeah, all that research.
Yeah, and then people got really annoyed because I guess I let it slip, and then the other girl that had been running for the school newspaper was like, "You got on because what? You won over me because you were doing research for your book?" I was like,
"Okay, this sounds like a contemporary novel. Like,
yeah,
write this now."
Yeah, I should actually.
Just thinking about like what constitutes a school, because I'm looking at like a list of books set in magic schools, and like I really liked Tamora Pierce's Circle of Magic books, which aren't like a school. It's more of like everyone has kind of a mentor and apprenticeship kind of thing, but it still had that like school like structure, and I really like that. So it's a little like, oh, what if, rather than just like, this is my regular school. Piper's crying.
Oh, also thinking like, what's the line between this? Oh, okay. Kelly went to go get her dog. Like, what's the line between this is like based at a school and they just happen to go to school? I think like the way that you write those two are a little bit different, because if you're doing like let's say academy or like boarding school stories, you're going to be really focused on like the life, because that's also the main setting. Whereas I think in maybe like contemporaries or other ones where they just go to school, that's just kind of like a plot point to like get to that you kind of like dip in and out. So it's like like where's the line of like, oh, this is like a high school story, or this is like an academy story, and this is just like, oh, they just happen to go to school.
So like the difference between like, this is a school story and this is a story where it's not realistic if they're not going to school, so we're gonna send them there.
Well, because I can think of so many like contemporary novels where I'm like, yeah, they're like in school part of the time, or like, yeah, they go to art class because that's what teenagers do. But then I'm like, I don't consider that like a school story.
Yeah, it's easier in fantasy because school is so often like the way the reader learns about the magic. We're going to go learn magic so that, one, the character can learn magic, and two, we can like explain the world in painstaking detail, and it makes sense plot-wise.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I just thought of Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Like, Clove goes to university. Like, that's the whole point. Everyone's like, it's such a boring book. I'm like, yeah, because he's like going into like student debt and like trying to like go learn like sort of magic at this academy, and like defending his thesis in front of magicians.
I ran into which. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was actually going to pass it to you because you had some thoughts about The Magicians by Levi Grossman earlier in the pre-chat. So, Kelly did. Okay.
Yeah, I just find the book's very pretentious. Like, it's a very like.
Oh yeah.
The characters are kind of jerks because they get to go to this school, so it's kind of just a school of jerks.
They deserve each other.
Yeah.
I actually ran into the problem with the whole, like, how much is the school a part of the plot versus how much is the plot just happening around and in the school with the book I was writing, which is Dark Academia, because there is fantasy elements or like horror elements, but the school itself isn't actually magical. So a lot of the plot is like in the school, but it's not happening like within the context of like a classroom. Like, they need to be out there fighting monsters. They can't be in math class. So, but I'm writing it and I'm realizing, well, they're never in class. That's not realistic either. They're just like wandering around the grounds, in the middle of the night fighting each other, and they never go to a Latin class or whatever, So yeah, I'll have to tackle that in the edits eventually, but at time I'm like, I realize I'm doing this and there's no balance here, but I'm not quite sure how to get that balance in the edits, you know?
Well, okay, so I had a question I was waiting for Emma to get here. So for Emma and Leah, people who have worked, I guess Rachel as well, worked in a school setting, are there things you see in books where you're like, oh, this is not realistic at all, or just like tropes you see that stand out or anything like that? Of just, people are not writing this realistically.
Good question.
I would say sometimes it's a matter of legality of what like teachers would do or not do. So like, for example, I was reading a book where a teacher gave a student a ride home. Unless like a parent has signed a note saying that you can do that, you can't do that liability-wise.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I mean, that's kind of like a technical detail, but you know.
But no, but that's exactly the kind of thing I'm asking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what, Leah? What ages are you teaching?
I was teaching high school, so 9 through 12. So like freshmen through.
So prime YA, basically.
Yeah.
And Emma, you work at a library at the university. So is that a different perspective?
Maybe. I mean, I haven't really read a lot of books that take place in colleges or universities.
I feel like there's like a whole subsection just for like libraries.
Yeah.
And libraries and what they do wrong.
Yeah. Like the first thing that comes to mind is just like that, like all librarians hate the stereotype of like the librarian who like shushes you and like, you know, like, and just like wears like, I mean, and lots of librarians like cardigans. Libraries can be cold, but like the very stereotypical like old single lady with 5 cats who shushes everyone and is like really mean and grumpy. Like librarians hate that. I don't think that's as common anymore in fiction though, as it was in like the 90s. It was really popular then.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you get the opposite stereotype, which is like the sexist version of that, where it's like you pull down your hair and take off your glasses and you're suddenly like super smoking hot, cool librarian. It's 2 stereotypes, nothing in between. I would actually love to see a book written in like a university or college library, like where most of the scene is set there, or someone's working there or volunteering or something. That would be really cool.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to start going down to my library more often. I feel like I also didn't have like a university experience. Like I work at a university, but I technically go to university, but like I took online classes for almost my entire degree. So I never really had the experience of like living in a dorm or like going down to the cafeteria or what have you. So I'm like, I don't even know what's going on in my university. I just go to my office.
Weird stuff.
Apparently.
The dorms were weird.
So I mean, like, I look at this stuff and I'm like, I guess I can only see this from like an admin perspective, and like, it seems fine. So like, do teachers do that? I don't know.
Someone needs to do like from the perspective of admin at a magical school.
Oh my gosh, that'd be so
always,
great.
Like, the dragon is flying by the window, and they're just like, "Oh, not again!"
Like type something into the phone. George, he's on the loose again. Go and get him before the first years get here. Yeah,
he's on the roof.
Yeah,
it's very hard to concentrate.
Yeah, somebody like a director goes by, and I'm like, "Ma'am, we've outdone the budget for magical broomsticks this year. Like, I can't order you a new one." Honestly, that'd be very fun. Maybe I'll kick that around.
Amazing. Just like fielding calls from angry parents that are like, "There's a giant serpent in the walls again this year," you know.
And I'm like, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't help you. That's not my department. But I'm gonna transfer you to student services, and they're gonna be able to help you. Let me give you this person's phone number." That is truly most of my job.
Very funny.
People call, they're like, "I need this, this, and this, and my student number is that. I'm going here." I'm like, "I do not know you. Like, I'm not sure why you think I can help you, but okay."
I love when they've called the wrong number, but like they won't stop talking long enough for you to tell them that. And so they like spill everything to you, and you're like, "I can't help you with this." And I'm sorry, you're gonna have to explain it to someone else again.
Kind of a side note, just think because Rachel mentioning not having ever done the dorm life thing. Aaron, I don't imagine you did. I definitely didn't. So I wonder if like the football stuff in high school, if like Canadian and American post-secondary it's pretty different as well, but it's always expected that you kind of write the American perspective of how it all works. So there's kind of, and like I feel research is just kind of watching TV, and however media tells me they do it, I'll believe them. But
I don't know that the Canadian and American higher education experiences are that different. It's just that like one type of like American experience is like very common in media. Like Megan and I had a pretty common experience. Like we went to a university and like we stayed in dorms as freshmen and stuff. But like I know plenty of people who don't do that. Like my husband graduated from college at like 35 years old. You know, like there's plenty of people who have, and like I work at college now, so like we have a lot of students. It's a small town, so like most of the students like live with their parents and are just like getting their associates before they go somewhere else. So everyone's experience is very different.
But even just things like, for us, university and college are different things.
They're different here too.
Yeah. But I've heard the same phrase used for both of them, like to mean university.
So we use college as a generic word, but a college and a university are different things.
Are different. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So like
for us,
I work at a place
community
that
college.
is a college.
They've changed it kind of since I was in high school, but originally like college, there was no any degrees. It was, you got diplomas. It was a 2-year thing. Yeah. It's adapted a bit since then, but they were different things.
Yeah, like as far as I know,
if a place's name has college in it, they only do 2-year like associate's degrees, or they might have a couple bachelors, but it's almost only 2-year. And then universities.
We have any degrees for only 2 years here. That's not a thing.
They can call an associate at 2 years, and it just like they transfer that to a university.
Yeah, as far as I know, we would never use the word college for like a catch-all term. I don't think.
Yeah, that's a big difference. It's just that we use it as a generic term instead of being specific about what we're talking about. Okay, unless you're talking to someone who works in higher ed, and then they're going to be like, I work at a university or I work at a college.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but for the students, it's just like classes are classes. So you're in college.
Yeah.
You're busy.
I think it maybe gets a little bit more skewed in like TV. I'm thinking first, I'm like CW shows. You know, I'm like going to university, like everybody is in drama, or like even it's like supernatural, you know, new students are vampires, and now the teachers are being weird, and like everyone's hooking up, and there's a coven in the basement, and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I didn't get that from my university experience. Honestly, I'm a little bit sad.
You didn't get to join a coven?
Well, it's
I joined a cult.
So. So like I think in books it's like a little bit less ridiculous, but.
Yeah. I like with the high school stuff, I wonder how much media kind of heightens it, because I've always felt like American high schools paid way more attention to extracurriculars than any high schools I was aware of like media always made it seem like you were aggressively in band or sports, and for us it was like maybe a thing you did on Tuesdays, but it wasn't like defining the rest of your education or anything. But I never knew how like realistic that was versus like media.
I think it depends on the person.
Thoughts about this, I think.
Yeah, so I would say it definitely depends on the location of the school. So for example, I grew up in a really small community. And so like, if you wanted to, you could be on multiple sports teams and like multiple activities, because there were so few people that like, we just need bodies on the field. Like you don't have to be great at it. Right. And of course, football was still like the most popular and most watched and supported sport, but like our cross country team was actually pretty good. We went to state more often than the football team did, but like we still didn't get like the crowds. And then at the school that I was teaching at most recently, they were die-hard football fans to the point where during the homecoming week, the girls who were on homecoming court would get Friday afternoon off to go and get like their hair done and stuff like that. They'd just get excused from class. And I was like, what is going on?
What? Whoa. That's intense. Weird. That seems fake. That's like, no.
I know. And like, there's this like weird ritual with the football team where like before they have a game, they have a team meal, but they're not allowed to talk to each other during the team meal. They just sit there and concentrate and think about the game that is upcoming.
Wow.
And it's
That freaks me out.
it's very weird.
Weird.
Like, yeah, I was going to say cult vibes.
I think the thing about extracurriculars in high school that I always found was like way different in real life than it was in like books and movies is that like in a real school, like kids do multiple extracurriculars. Like I feel like in like books it'd always be like, these are the football kids and these are the band kids and these are the nerd kids. And like, but it was like, I was in like honors classes and like we had like cheerleaders and football players and drama kids. And we had people who like were in band and played baseball or, you know, did theater and played soccer, you know, like there's a lot more crossing between the group.
And there were like instances where like if you were in the marching band, you couldn't also be on the football team. Like it's just a conflict. You can't do it. But for the most part.
Well, I think just in books it's easier to
people aren't divided into categories of like jock and nerd and consider you can only be this one aspect for the rest of your life.
Well, like when you're writing a book, I get it because it's just easier because you don't want to be like, yeah, my character is a super real person who does like every 18,000 things in their day. Like you want to be able to like focus it down. So like I get that. Another question I was thinking of earlier. If no one does anybody have anything to say more than that? Okay. I was thinking about how middle grade and YA compare when it comes to like school things, because I guess in my mind, of course, big HP is that's like the school, like the fantasy school, whatever. But for some reason, I associate middle grade more than I do YA. So that like, the School for Good and Evil was a bestseller. Of course now,
and even in like realistic fiction, I feel like middle grade focuses more on school, and I think a lot of that is just like because that age is a lot about like finding your place and figuring out who you want to be, kind of thing. And so like school is always a good setting for that. Like you're going into middle school and trying to figure out where you fit in,
And like you're outside of your home and aware of it kind of for the first time. And so it's like like 6th grade Megan starts sneaking eyeshadow to school so I can put it on once I get there. And it's like that thing that like now I am asserting a personality that I didn't previously feel like I could assert in my own home, but I can do it because I'm not there anymore and there's no rules.
And school also like it gets characters out of the house and away from their parents in one of the only ways they can be, because like none of their friends can drive yet, and like unless you're setting it in like the 80s, they're probably not just like wandering around the neighborhood on their bikes, and stuff. So like it's harder for them to like go out and like have an adventure, like going wherever they want, like teenagers maybe can do slightly more realistically.
Yeah, so for teens it's almost more like, oh, I'm trying to have the adventures, but I also have to deal with school, whether it's like an actual fantasy setting versus a contemporary one.
Well, I was going to ask Erin, like, because you've written both or are writing both like a YA dark academia, and then also you have written like a middle grade academia, or multiple ones, I suppose, that like could fall into that category, or that you've rewritten to be something else, but you have originally written like school stories. So like, how did you like write both of those? Like, did you go into different mindsets, or was it just like, oh, it's school and the classes are just like easier for the younger ones?
Well, with the originally like with the middle grade, it's already very much like a different voice for one thing. So the whole tonally it's going to be different in general. With Escape to Witch City, they don't actually go to school until the very end. Like they just learn about there's a school and there's magic at that school. Like, and there's all the regular subjects, but then we also learn how to do, like charms and stuff. So like I had imagined that if I got to write another one as having probably the like I think Kelly said earlier, like a lot of the introduction to the world is through school. So you're very like in the school having that adventure and the introduction to the world. Whereas like when I was writing the YA, yeah, like I said, that was one of the things I struggled with, is like, I don't have any school happening because they're off, trying to keep from being murdered on the school grounds, essentially, and
as one
also
does.
I think, yeah, and also I think it depends if the school's magic or not, even if it is in a magic world, because the case with my YA was like, oh, the setting is magic, but the school is not. So nobody cares what's going on in math class, unless it's secretly magic, but the magic is in the woods, so I can't have the math class going on. So I actually, this is something I was saying pre-chat, has been frustrating, and I have to find out how to keep it realistic so that they're still at the school and it's obvious they're still going to classes, but also having, chasing murderers outside at night type of thing,
Yeah.
It's a challenge.
This is a good question we could pose to like people in the chat as well. Like, when you have a school setting and you're trying to infuse magic into the world, but the school itself isn't particularly magical, like what are ways that you try and infuse that magic in without making the school completely unrealistic?
Yeah. Or spending long, lengths of time in class, and it's like, this does not matter to the story, right? Like, aside from mentioning offhandedly in the narration she's coming out of math class or whatever, I mean, I would of course do that, but it also sometimes doesn't seem like enough of a balance,
Yeah. Has anybody else like here written school stories, or like stories that took place in high school or what have you? I feel like I wish Kyra was here, because I feel like Kyra's written a couple.
Kyra's written a lot. I've written one or two.
My contemporary YA, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I've done a contemporary fantasy where like the characters went to school, like the story wasn't centered around it. There were definitely scenes where they were there.
The funny thing is, I know, like Rachel, you were saying, the middle grades I've done have been rewritten, and one of the reasons they were rewritten was because they were in a school initially and it was a magic school, and I got essentially swatted down by my publisher because they were like, no, this is too much like Harry Potter. And I'm like, in my opinion, it was not like Harry Potter. It was much more of like a creepy gothic type of school and magic system, but it was still too similar. It was middle grade kids in school learning magic, and I think this was like about 4 years ago or something like that.
And I want more of that. Like,
I know, so do I.
Yeah,
it wasn't like it was an original thing when she did it. So why do we have to be done?
Leah has written a high fantasy that takes place largely at a school, and the school was one of my favorite parts of that setting.
Well, thank you. Erin, I was wondering about your book. You mentioned that they're out in the woods a lot. Do they have like some sort of science class that they could be taking where they would like go out and like look at things in the woods?
That's true. That's very smart. Didn't think about that. Yeah.
That was also a very good deflection. Don't think I didn't see that.
Just multifaceted skills.
Yeah, I guess I'm working on a book that actually, since you've read it, I've cut down the school scenes, but I suppose like one of the settings could be considered school-like, because one of the characters goes to the palace to compete to be the next advisor to the next ruler, and so they're learning more about the government system and how to advise royalty and such. So.
That's very
cool. You find a few books that'll like find ways to do magic school without doing magic school, like Greek mythology summer camp or some sort of contest to be a magic person, or like ways to like get it in without being Harry Potter is kind of.
I think like we were talking about poison study before, and like that to me is not something that someone look at and be like, this is Harry Potter, because it's so specific, right? Like that's a very specific branch, I guess, of magic. So yeah, I don't think that would get shot down, that type of thing, even now.
I mean, even thinking like Shadow and Bone, because Alina goes to the little palace and she learns stuff.
She's homeschooled, kind of.
Yeah, also helps all of these examples is that none of them are set in the real world. They're all in like secondary world fantasies, so that helps too.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking now, like, again, this isn't, but again, is this like a school book? Because not really. Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe, which is great. A good portion of that takes place between the two main characters in class because they have class together, and that's like how they meet, and like that's where they go to like have their rendezvous. So it's like, you know, like at least that's realistic. I think like that's a good portrayal of like it mentions that they're in the school hallways and they're talk like there's other people around. Oh, now they're in class, but like it's not like beat for beat. So I think like that's a good way of kind of like sneaking it in to a contemporary.
Yeah, this one doesn't have any fantasy elements at all, but I think it does kind of blend what you're saying of like adding enough to make it is like one of us was lying or one of us is lying.
Yeah.
Because like the premise is of course that someone dies in detention and then there are different suspects of like what happened to this person. And so like obviously we have that setting, but we also see a lot of their home lives and like just parts of the investigation. So it's not necessarily like a school book because we don't see them going to their classes all that often. I mean, we get mentions and such, but
yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, I must interrupt this chat. As great as it is, we need to look at the puppy. We absolutely need to see the puppy.
This is Penny.
Is Penny?
Penny. It's Penny.
Gosh.
so cute.
Fluffy.
She's 10 weeks old now.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
Very fighty.
And starving.
Fingers.
Yeah.
She's so cute.
She's really cute.
How much bigger is she expected to get?
So she's like 4 pounds-ish now. A lot of it is fluff. She'll get to be 10.
Okay.
So small.
I just like that you're doing like bicep curls with her.
Yeah.
This is
Oh
the
my
internet.
goodness.
Say hello.
Everyone in the comments is loving her too.
We're all so distracted by
I had a Harry Potter thought before. I'm trying to bring it back up. Something about like, that was the only book I can think of where I really enjoyed the actual classes, like going to potions class and like getting those little pieces of magic and like it was always plot relevant because they used the spells eventually and whatever, but it didn't feel plot relevant at the time, which was really nicely handled. Of like Wingardium Leviosa didn't feel like a thing we needed to know, but it was cool. But
And you always kind of wanted more.
That.
Like you kind of wanted them to just sit there and have full classes all the time and be like,
100%.
forget about saving the world. Let's go to class.
let's just go to school. Yeah.
We're all
I wonder if the way you like make it feel that way is just that you have an extremely large world that you've already worked out the subject matter for. That way you are able to like, oh, we've got all these random details, then we're going to stick in this one there, and that one is going to be important later. Like,
Yeah.
and then they keep coming up. Because I think it's not just that like, oh, we use that at the end of the book. It's that these lessons are coming up in very natural ways later.
Yeah, it's also a nice way to like make fantastical things that happen later seem more grounded. Like we have the room of flying keys, but we know how we make things fly. So it's neat, but it's not like suspend your disbelief neat. They've made it part of.
I'm curious with like the Vampire Academy books, did they do similar things in that? Like did you actually see classes there?
Sort of, because like the main character wasn't a vampire. So she was half vampire, so they had like half kind of normal classes. They shared those classes with the vampires, and the vampires all went off, and they each vampire has like a type of magic, so you'd go and learn your magic stuff, like your specialization, whereas the half vampires would go and learn not self-defense, they're defending the vampires, but like fighting and that kind of stuff. So we weren't in the magic classes because the main character wasn't there. So, but we did a lot of the fighting classes because the love interest was a fighting class teacher. So,
of course,
student romance. Boy.
Yeah, let's just right now. No student teacher romances. It's weird.
No more.
We're tabling it. It's
in the
not
year
gonna be
2021.
Exactly.
Table that.
I don't care if there's the only thing is if it's in a new adult and it's like a TA who's like
or like
just a little. That's fine. No,
PhD
but nothing else.
student post grad romance, like that's okay, whatever.
Or it's a horror.
Yeah,
and it goes bad.
That goes badly. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking like Cruel Summer, the TV series. I
yeah.
watched that, and it
I
was
haven't seen that.
really compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
but
see.
otherwise, just stick that in the desk drawer and don't revisit it.
It's just-
Nope.
yeah.
But also, all of you who haven't read Vampire Academy, still do it. It's great.
I've read like
is that
2
one
or
of the
3 of
plot
them, and they
threads?
are great.
Okay, cool. I'm thinking now there's been like a big resurgence of dark academia. I'm going to say particularly because of TikTok, the thing that influences everything nowadays. So I feel like that maybe schools are going to have a comeback. I'm also thinking because my laptop's propped up on a stack of books, and one of them that's in this stack is Ace of Spades, which is like really
I was going to mention
big.
that one.
Yeah, because it was like really big. I haven't read it yet. I'm so sorry. I'm getting to it. That's really big right now. So other people are making all these big like dark academia fall reads and like, oh, did you like boarding schools? Try these ones. So maybe like publishers will start realizing like, oh, people actually want these, and maybe we'll get more.
And I think an academic setting is great for a gothic vibe, for a horror vibe, and horror is doing very well right now in publishing. And I do think there's a lot of conversations happening online right now with people being like, hey, but I want lighthearted. And my brain is like, oh, well, dark academia is very big. It is a matter of time before someone's like, oh, what about light academia? And then we are back at boarding magic schools.
Hell yeah.
Back in the game.
I don't know, like taking like light academia towards like cottage core and like cozy witchcraft and stuff.
Yeah, and I do think that's kind of the vibe that is gonna get moved into. I hope dark academia stays around too, because I love horror and spooky things. But I think that's gonna be what opens the door a little bit more for more schools.
Very much like some cottage core vibes in fantasy fiction.
I want the dark academia because that's what my wardrobe looks like. So like,
I'm trying to figure out how you would do cottagecore, like academy. Because
Like,
not so much with schools, but
gardening.
By definition, very cozy, but
just nothing but herbology class.
Everyone passes a whole magic herbology school,
or like magical creatures. I feel like
that's true.
Yeah, instead of like herding sheep, you would like
just like learning to be forest witches.
Even potions.
Yeah,
I would read the crap out of that.
it's like a slightly more academic version of the House in the Cerulean Sea.
Did someone say that you would just learn to herd sheep?
Yeah, no, like it's like
I
magical
always thought you
creatures
were gonna
instead of
talk
learning
about,
instead of like I'm like farming cottages, cottage core, whatever. Like if you like you have your vegetable garden and like you got some sheep, but maybe they're not sheep, they're some other kind of like magical creature. I don't know.
Shepherdess college.
Yeah.
I like.
Has anyone else seen Shang-Chi yet?
No.
Oh, there's like little faceless, almost sheep-shaped animals that would be fun.
Okay.
What?
I want to see it so bad, but I live in Florida and I can't risk my life for that.
I got to see it in a theater with 7 people, so it was
Nice.
a different conversation.
I think I'm gonna go see it soon. I hear amazing things.
Kayla says there's an herbalist college in our city. Okay, I'm looking.
That's cool.
Jennifer Daniels said cottagecore academia, gardening, natural cures, no technology.
Yes. No
Which I've seen a lot of people, readers, talking about like, oh, I would like romance that's just fantasy. Like, it's a rom-com, but it's set in a fantasy world. Like, and that would be the perfect setting for something like that.
Oh my gosh.
So cute.
Well, I want to write something. Maybe this will get me writing again. We'll see.
Okay, the herbalist college is not what I was hoping it would look like.
Alas.
It looks nothing like herbology from Harry Potter. What are
They can't do magic, Aaron.
We had a question from Vanessa, like, is it traditional publishers that were rejecting school ideas? Yeah, I think most of the no school pushback is in the traditional publishing world because self-publishing, you can put out whatever you want. And if people want to read it,
Yeah,
I'm trying to think if that like really popular vampire self-published series, I can't remember what it's called. If it had a school setting, it might have. I have no idea what it was called anymore.
In my case as well, it was my publisher in particular, who yes is a traditional publisher, but like this for me was not like super widespread. I think I had gone out on submission with something, and there was like a handful of people that said that, and then my main publisher as well was like, we don't know if we can sell this right now. And that was like a number of years ago. If you had a more, like I said, if you had a more specific school and not like a school of all general magic, and you had like a better twist on it, that's not saying that a traditional publisher wouldn't pick it up. So do not let my experience discourage you. So
yeah, I do think it's important to like know going in, if you're going for traditional publishing, you are gonna need to be ready to persevere or to find a super unique bend on it. That's like, no, it absolutely must be at this school.
If it is commercial enough and it is, unique enough, it's a spin on something that is previously thought of as cliche, you can still sell it. It's just, like Megan said, be prepared to persevere. Accept rejection when it does happen, because it will. If you're trying to get traditional published, it will happen.
Especially in today's
yes. That's rough right now.
Yeah.
Wait, speaking of today's climate, did you guys see that there's going to be like a book shortage?
Yes.
On Twitter.
I did not see that. What did it say?
Just the supply chain. Shortage. So like actually making books. Is going to start becoming
like booksellers are telling people like do your holiday shopping for books now,
or buy gift cards because they're gonna run out during the holidays. Kind of just like everything else has been having supply chain shortages.
And apparently a lot of this tied back to the Suez Canal situation, which I did not know.
Still,
I know it was stuck there for a long time, but
it would make sense that if things are significantly backlogged, that it would have far-reaching repercussions.
It's just like a chain reaction of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I thought you meant, because I think I would be surprised if this happens at some point too, but maybe not for 2 years, that we will have a shortage of, specific genres coming out. So they're,
likely.
in 2 years from now, we will only see a handful of YA fantasies because nobody's buying YA fantasies.
I was thinking more like post-apocalyptic and plague.
Or that too,
I do think
or vampire books,
Yeah, I think that's pretty normal for publishing though.
Oh, for sure.
5 years ago, 7 years ago, it was like, don't market your book as a horror. No one will buy it if you say it's a YA horror. Like
publishing has this awful tendency to just go all in on one thing and, ride it till it's dead. And then they're like, let's do the next thing and do that exact same thing to it again.
Yeah, like whereas right now, if you've written a contemporary fantasy and it's kind of dark, you would pitch it as a horror right now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's why you get a lot of these like dark contemporary fantasies that you're like, well, this was pretty dark. Was it scary? But it was pitched as a horror because that's what's selling.
That's what's selling.
I know, right?
Publishing. That's a whole other chat.
Yeah.
We had a really good question from N. Griswold. What are some of the trends / story beats readers or publishers expect from stories set at schools?
That's a good question.
One of my favorite tropes is students have just learned a very important plot point and are now trying to recuperate from that plot point in the middle of class. So like teacher is teaching and we are trying to talk to each other about the murder we just witnessed or the big magic thing we've just discovered.
I definitely also like, and I don't see this utilized as often as I would like in good ways, is that unlikely pair that's shoved together with like a class thing, and it's either an enemies to lovers thing or just an enemies thing, and they butt heads and tension about the rest of the story. Like Megan said, like a murder has just happened, or like him and her are like in a war with each other and they're throwing spells at each other, but now they're in biology and they're together on this class project. They have to pretend to like get along or whatever. So I really love that type of thing. But again, I don't necessarily want to see it though done like Twilight, where it's like he wants to eat her. Like let's have it be more nuanced than that.
Yeah, I feel like one of the stereotypical.
I was gonna say, I think like every story set in a school, like, your character has to have a rival. Like there has to be a rival if you're gonna write a story in a school.
Yeah, that's true. Or like a set of rivals, like another group, like because high schools tend to, and even probably universities tend to get, depending on the size, get cliquey. And so inevitably you're going to have a clique that you maybe don't get along with, or you think they're all snobby or whatever. And I actually really like when people sort of flip the trope on its side and do like there's the popular girl, and I cannot stand if she's like the mean cheerleader, because I'm like, we have had enough of those. I'm so sick of that. But when the author flips that on his head and makes the mean girl or the cheerleader or whatever like part of the story in a good way, and she's not the mean girl and she has qualities, like I enjoy that.
Well, because I was starting to think about in terms of expectations, Harry Potter and Buffy kind of set up the climax happens at the end of the school year. And but Buffy also did like the mean girl cheerleader eventually was just part of the gang. So they kind of took it and like, look, she has hidden depths. She's not just this.
Yeah. I like that. That in itself is a trope on top of a trope, but I don't care. I still like it.
I like how like every like big bad villain is like, I'm gonna hit them at final exam time, and I'm like, that's so evil. That's so evil.
Diabolical.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a big trope in schools as well is the mentor character having a teacher or administrator who is there to help kind of guide you along, or just like is present when you need them.
Yeah.
There to introduce relevant plot points.
Yeah. Or to be plot twist to the bad guy. Like
I also really like and I don't know why, because this is such a like a Harry Potter sprung cliche trope, but like the adventure ending in some kind of like sick room or somewhere where they're recovering, even if it's their own room or whatever. And usually it's been like, it was traumatic, but we're all okay. And now we're looking forward to the summer or whatever. And then, we tidy up the last bits of the story there where they find out like usually like a little bit of a monologue, and we find out this happened. And usually the mentor comes in and does that, Like Harry Potter is a great example of that, with like, hey, here's all the chocolate frogs that the students sent you. Thanks for rescuing the school or whatever. So I really I've seen that in a handful of other stuff. And so I like definitely did at the end of Escape Twitch City, because I was like, I like this. I don't know why. It gives me warm and fuzzies.
Yeah. I think too, if you're going to have the framework of a school setting, in addition to an outside plot, like there has to be a moment, whether it's the midpoint of your book or the climax or whatever, where the plot that is going on interrupts the business as usual of school, and it's just like symbolism. Yay.
Yeah, or you have a magical creature that comes to the high school and you have to deal with it.
Yeah, the protagonist
how do I
can't
balance
keep
all
the
of these
conflict
things?
at bay.
Yeah, now I really want to watch Buffy again.
Yeah. I'm also thinking of like timing, because we briefed on this. I'm like, oh, the climax of the book happens at the end of the school year, but it's like I feel like maybe people like schools because you have a very set amount of time for the story to happen, and it's usually 1 year. I guess you could do like per semester, which is like 4 to 5 to 6 months, but I guess you have that like yearly pacing, so you could, in theory, stretch out your story quite long. Or you could because I read a book the other day that took place over 3 days, and I'm like, this is too much. Like the things that are happening, y'all are falling in love and like doing this like fantasy adventure, and like it's been 3 days. Like, oh my god. So I feel like in a school story or what have you, you can't really do that, because it would not make sense if you're like in high school classes and also on this adventure and also falling in love like within a week. Like that's I know, like, I don't think that would work.
I do think in a YA you can get away with it a little bit more, because in high school things can be pretty sweeping, pretty like we've just met and we only have 8 months to see if we are forever.
Just looking at Vampire Academy because everything until they graduated, just maybe book 4 or 5. Now that I'm thinking about it, was all the last year. It was all kind of their senior year, rather than it being year by year.
All right. Well, that was another thing I wanted to bring up eventually. Of like, I guess also people like schools or academies, because if you start when they're 14, 15, you have at least 4 books until they graduate to write if you want to do that. So a lot of people will like set series like pretty young. So like, do you guys like that at all? Would you rather just read about like a 12th grade, like one and done, get it over with, or do you like following someone throughout the years?
It depends on the series, because like it's hard to like keep that age group from 14 to 18 are different. Like that's almost 3 different categories of high middle grade to
I enjoy reading those things when they're done well, but as a writer, I personally would be hesitant to try it because I know it would be a tough sell because your age market would graduate from your series and you might not get to finish it if you're going the traditional publishing route. Not to say like no one should, but I personally would be like, I'm going to need to be pretty confident that it's going to do very well.
I feel like the sweet spot is always grade 11 because in case you need a sequel, there's
2 books.
I think it also depends on like the characters, because if you connect well with the characters, you'll want to see more with them, versus if it's just a character that you're maybe not as connected with, you might not want 4 books of them in high school.
True. I was insufferable in high school, so like I don't really know if I want to read someone else being insufferable for 4 books.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now that I think about it, it's more done in fantasy than it is in contemporary. We don't really follow a contemporary book series, or maybe there's one out there, but not one I'm aware of across multiple years.
Yeah, and I do think right now there is a big gap. We're missing a lot of the younger YA age in books right now. So there's, middle grade up to like 12, and then you're jumping in to YA and they're all 16. And so what's happening to these like 14 to 15-year-olds?
Yeah, I haven't read a book with a 15-year-old protagonist in a very long time.
Yeah, I'm sure they exist. Give us your recs if you know them. Yeah. But I do think there are not enough right now.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other market chat that we could have.
We mentioned earlier, like, we need to have a publishing chat. And actually, I checked our schedule. We do have a publishing then and now chat scheduled for 2 weeks from, 1 week from today.
Ooh,
1 or 2 weeks from today.
Yeah, because the last one will be games. So.
Yeah.
It'll just be us complaining about the state of the market.
Yeah. So next week, our chat is publishing then and now. Sorry, my schedule was a little mixed up because we canceled one, or we postponed the book club. That's what it was. So yeah, next week, publishing then and now.
If we don't want it to be overwhelmed with like us just ranting about, we'll put a timer for like 5 minutes, and then we could just go as hard as we want, and then be like, all right, this is done.
And then go back to optimism.
Yeah, we're talking about like publishing in general. Yeah,
because we've been here a long time. So please like and subscribe if you want to see us talk about that.
Yes, please like and subscribe. Thank you, Megan, for that very good segue.
And I will say, as like a preview of next week, that like there are also good things that have changed.
For sure.
We started the channel now, and
it's not going to be your plan.
Yeah.
I do want to be on top of this, Emma, because you weren't here when we started and couldn't remember who's hosting, but you are hosting next week.
Yes.
So I got to do this. Like, who's hosting?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know.
So Emma will bring some optimism.
Yes.
Lovely. All right, well, we're coming up on about an hour. Does anybody have any other final thoughts? I don't think there are any final questions. If you have any final questions, please post them, and we'll see if we can get to them.
Just that I want more magical schools. I will never get tired of them.
Yeah, I'd love to try writing one, but it's so intimidating to me because I'm not a world building person. So
yeah, we'll have to ask. Maybe Kyra can give some advice.
yeah,
School stories just require like so many characters. It feels like
That's
you gotta
true.
have teachers, you gotta have the students in the other classes, and
That's true.
making it feel like making the population feel like real and fleshed out without like spending a bunch of time on like giving every character like very specific personalities, but also making it feel like it's not just a bunch of like cardboard cutouts
Right.
sitting in the classroom.
Who gets a first name and a last name and the description? Like,
I'm once again just annoyed at how well Harry Potter did all of these things. Of like,
dang. I'm curious, do you guys have any tips for like how do you decide since schools have to be so big, which students get like details versus like, oh, this guy in the background?
If they get a line, even if it's a short line, they get a first name at least, probably not a last name, and a very like brief one-line description, so that usually it's like they're going to see them again, either in the background or like standing in the way of the doorway or whatever. Like they will be another character that you will see again later. Otherwise they don't. They're cardboard cutouts and they don't get a name or a description. They're like a group by the door, that type of thing.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. I felt like this was a very good chat. So please, like Megan said earlier, please like and subscribe if you would like to have other writing related things. We do live chats every Sunday, same time, same place. Have a good week. If I know many of you are, I'm not sure how many word nerds are in school at the moment, but for any of our viewers, good luck. I know the semester just started. I've already had 2 classes, so it's weird. It's weird going back, be it like online
America
or in
school
person.
started like a month ago.
Yeah.
Really?
Back a long time.
Oh, it started in August?
I started
Oh.
I think it varies state to state. Like the states that
it
are
does.
closer to
Oh,
us.
that's weird.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm over in Canada, so we start like
I think like states where it's
September.
hot all the time is very different than like states where
Although I do
always
think
in school.
most colleges and universities start in August in the US.
Oh,
It feels like
interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
we all just do Labor Day here. Just
Yeah, we started September 7th.
I just missed September.
A fun fact that I did not know. Okay.
I just know it from writing YA. YA. That's when the YA characters go to school.
Yeah. Well, in the spirit of learning, I just learned something today, so thank you. All right. Well, if you've been in school, if you're doing online, in person, what have you, I wish you all the best of luck. We're all going to make it through. We're going to get ourselves an education. So in that scenario, I hope you have a good week. Happy reading, happy writing, and we will see you all next Sunday. Bye.